And the joy for me still remains is making hardware solutions. So that are really valuable, that have really kind of high utility, not just kind of clever or impressive. So the good news is that I get to do that, and I think we're in that luxurious position about really thinking hard about product now, because we started with the foundations of thinking hard about markets.
Welcome to Deep Dive, the podcast where we will explore the ins and outs of managing deep tech products. I'm your host Ravi Sundaram, and we'll be talking to product leaders about the intricate and innovative process of transforming cutting-edge science and technology into products that shape our future. Join us as we learn from these industry-leading experts on how to turn groundbreaking scientific discoveries into tangible real-world experiences. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Ed Wood, the VP of Product at NuQuantum. Ed has years of experience across telecom and wireless systems and has spent a long time involved in hardware cryptography and was involved with nCipher, a hardware security module company, from pre-IPO to a thriving business that still dominates the market 20 years later. In the last 3 years, he's entered the world of deep tech with a Cambridge-based quantum startup called NuQuantum, a spin-out from Cavendish Physics lab at Cambridge University. Ed and NuQuantum are doing some fascinating work in developing technology that allows multiple smaller quantum computers to be interconnected, forming a network with significantly increased processing power. Today, we talk to Ed about how they pivoted from their product based on customer feedback. Changing strategy in deep tech is a bigger challenge, given the capital-intensive development required for any product. So we talked about how they started, why they pivoted, and how product managers can effectively help navigate such a strategy in deep tech. Welcome, Ed. Pleasure to have you.
Hi, Ravi. Thanks very much for having me. I mean, who doesn't like talking about themselves for half an hour? So it's a pleasure.
Absolutely, and we all learn from this. So excellent. Thank you for coming on. Right, maybe we can start with the fact that you and your team are doing some fascinating work on a very specific challenge in quantum computing. For our listeners who may be less familiar with the space, could you tell us why your products are needed and the specific challenge they're solving?
Sure. So basically the observation is that there's a number of different ways of doing quantum computing, which is modalities in the jargon. And all of these modalities hit limits of scale. So the number of qubits they can get to before they get really interesting and kind of solving really valuable problems. So in essence, we have some IP, some know-how, some patents about how to interconnect, as you said, how to interconnect small quantum computing cores together to make a bigger and more useful computer, and maybe make that computer available earlier. So the magic is being able to entangle qubits of these remote computers together in an orchestrated way to deliver a bigger compute surface. And it's always tempting to have these analogies back with classical computing. So if you think about modern cloud computing, the kind of service we're using right now, that's very much a ballet between orchestrating kind of classical compute and classical networking to deliver this fabulous service. So our belief is in the quantum domain that quantum networking is going to be at least as important as the kind of compute nodes. And in fact, there's some lenses you can look through which say it actually might be more valuable, it might be more important in delivering error-corrected logical qubits.
That's brilliant, and it's a challenge that really unlocks the power at the right time. So it's an interesting niche that you and your team are trying to tackle in this space. Maybe on those lines, specifically you as the head of product or a VP of product, could you describe how would you describe your role rather?
Okay, so I'll just a moment of kind of history. So I've been a product manager in different industries. I've been product manager myself. I've done startups. I've done big businesses, small businesses, and I've been a manager of product managers. So to start off at NuQuantum, which was when I joined a very small entity, I was the product manager. So really working with the CEO, so Carmen Palacios. And I was introduced to that business, I think you said, from a guy called Alex Van Summeren, who's was the CEO of nCipher, and kindly introduced me to Carmen and her co-founder. So the journey with NuQuantum, it's sort of, hindsight is kind of wonderful, but I think this is kind of basically how it went. So first, we really had a proper, serious look at kind of the markets that we could address. So what are the dynamics and sizes of these markets, and what problems exist or existed inside them that we could potentially solve. Then we sort of thought about potential solutions, then thinking about the kind of partners that you'd need, or the collaborators, and obviously the customers that we'd have, and then thinking about kind of marketing and communication. So the company is headed to being, scarily, 10 times bigger than it was when I first joined it. And we're just starting to recruit specialists. So we've already got a great marketing guy on board, and we'll soon have our first product manager working for us, and then we'll have kind of business development folks. So, and then we're also planning for kind of international expansion. So the net, I think, is it's been a bit of everything. So I can make a terrible pun. It's been, from qubits to coffee in the first instance. What coffee machine we have, you've got to make those kind of decisions, very important things. And then there's going to be this kind of gradual handover to people who are way better at me than at marketing and business development and sales. What else was I going to say? So obviously that we've expanded the management team as well. So I've got fantastic colleagues heading up technology, heading up IP, and the joy for me still remains is making hardware solutions. So that are really valuable, that have really kind of high utility, not just kind of clever or impressive. So the good news is that I get to do that, and I think we were in that luxurious position about really thinking hard about product now, because we started with the foundations of thinking hard about markets.
That is a very interesting journey, and actually again speaks to the way you operate, and you start with the customer and the markets, and then work backwards to what your product is, and you try to drive that vision of your product and plan that. So it's a nice little way to go about it. Maybe we can talk about your journey now a little bit. So you and NuQuantum specifically started with a particular technology and a vision for your product. And during your journey through various customer feedbacks or market research, you changed direction. Maybe you can firstly walk us through what that initial product vision was, and the specific problem it tried to solve, and what did you do, and then how did you land up with the changed vision, and how could you talk us through that process, please?
Okay, perfect. So I'll try and remember the history. So basically, when I joined the business, the company was looking to produce components that generated and detected individual photons with some kind of impressive performance. And that the original plan was that these were going to be used in what you could think of as kind of the quantum security markets. So really interesting things like making random number generators based on quantum phenomena, and the very kind of clever technology, thing called QKD, a quantum key distribution system to generate keys with really good promises about the quality and the lack of interception of those keys. So those are both things which I knew a little bit about, coming from this kind of hardware cryptography domain that I had. So the first 3 months was, which was in COVID, so it was also a bit of a weird time to start work for a new business. We're looking very hard at these quantum security markets, and then followed by work looking at other applications that we could see for them across broader kind of use cases. So breaking outside of quantum security, so looking at sensing, classical communications, computation, metrology. There's a really fascinating range of things that you can get to. So the methodology is not kind of black magic or kind of esoteric. It was inspired by pragmatic marketing's framework, a thing I've done a few times, but it gives you a nice way to kind of look at markets. And some of it's very obvious. So is there a pervasive need to solve this problem? Are people willing to pay to solve the problem? Could we service it profitably? What's the kind of competitive space like? So those are all kind of classic market analysis questions. I think the one that's I think has special power and is maybe it's easy to overlook, is you can tick a box to all of those questions. Lots of need, lots of they're willing to pay. I can make a thing that would make money. The secret question is there a sense of urgency about acquiring your product or your service? Because if that does not exist, then you can get lots of kind of happy faces and you can have lots of happy meetings, but you're not actually going to make any money. So the result was that using this kind of analysis, that the quantum security market is kind of interesting, and we wish everybody well, but and there's interest and kind of curiosity in solutions, but sometimes you can struggle with that sense of urgency. That can you convince yourself that somebody's going to not buy something else, or they're going to stand down a subscription or a service in preference for the thing that you're offering? And then a quick war story about my kind of previous career when I was doing selling cryptographic stuff or cryptographic solutions for banks, is if you think about the kind of attack surface that a bank has, they are just not going to compromise on intrusion detection, on encryption, all of these things. So you come up with, you've got to ask yourself, have this test about, will this service be sufficiently, will the need for this service be sufficiently urgent that somebody's prepared to not buy something else or prioritize your thing over something else? So I think the basic message from the analysis was that deep tech gives you no insulation from kind of business basics. So you've got to basically be able to tell me, sell me your thing, but without using whatever the magic word is, without using quantum. Why is this a better key distribution system? And you don't get to say quantum. And I think the tests for this market and this solution, you can go and look for. You really need to be able to talk about business benefit and or mitigation of business risk, and there has to be some real peril. You've really got to find a place where the absence of your service really exposes the business to risk, or they can see tangible, quantifiable benefit as a function of acquiring the service. So I think net, it's very easy to suffer from confirmation bias. If you're kind of you've got an idea, you've got a solution, you can go out and you can test it, and you can get people saying nice things, but be wary of confirmation bias. Be wary that you're fooling yourself, that because people are interested, they'll say nice things, that they're actually going to be prepared to buy it. Yeah, so I think that's it. And I think maybe the last message for technology specifically is about sort of cart and horse, in terms of, are you trying to find a fit for this cool thing that you've invented, or are you actually trying to find a problem and then honestly trying to match up the best technological solution for it? So you can do it the wrong way around. You can try and fit your technology to a market, and there are famous examples where that has worked. But generally, in my experience, better trying to understand, doing a kind of map of the market. Where's the problems? Where's the urgency? And then offering up, having the thought experiment about offering up your solution.
That's brilliant, and a profound message at that, in terms of the customers might like your product, might actually answer and might even tell you that, yeah, we'll buy this product, we like it.
That's right.
But the urgency and actually extracting that piece is where the magic sauce is, basically. That's a wonderful message. Maybe if I can follow up with a question, how did you go about doing this? I mean, really, if you could take us through, did you set up interviews with key players in the market and literally end up at their doorstep, either virtually or in person, and have open conversations? How did you go about this?
So yeah, basically there was a slog of, once we'd done that first analysis and once we'd found what felt like a kind of interesting target market, it was pretty relentless. I mean, this was still quite COVID-y at the time, but relentless calls with as many vendors as we could get hold of, as many players as we could get hold of. And we found that we could, our kind of position, being kind of relatively new and neutral in the space, we got really good feedback. And again, it's a triangulation thing. So if you have 3 conversations, you can get a very rough orientation of something. If you have 10 conversations, maybe it's getting more precise. If you get to 20, 30, 40, you can really build up a good picture of the market. You can keep testing yourself against bias. We sort of making a proposition and people say things, but if you can corroborate it over lots of conversations with different players at different positions in the stack in different countries, then you can think, well, maybe we have got something here. There is some consistent message or consistent prediction that maybe we can do something with.
That's excellent. I mean, it goes to show there is no replacement for going out into the cold front and getting proper customer feedback and testing your bias against that feedback, and building enough of a database to test that feedback. That's brilliant. Maybe we could go further into the journey now. So you have this feedback. You've got a sense of the direction you want to go, and a new at least a strategy to go in a new direction. What did you do next? Was it simple to get buy-in from your team, from the company? Did you have some activities, or was it a period of debate?
So I think there was debate. Maybe there was a little bit of surprise, or maybe a bit of alarm. This is quite a significant deviation, and finding a good market is a really good place to start, but then you need to be able to service it. So maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit in terms of the fit, that we've had a happy fit of the technology. So I think it's fair to say that the board initially were a little bit skeptical, and maybe we proposed it early, in terms of that there was not the topic of this networking for computing did not have the currency that it has now. But happily, that my mind or memory of the precise time, but maybe 3 months after we had proposed this change, a slew of really big companies started to announce roadmaps or make statements that basically indicated that they were themselves on a path, or they saw a need for this networking. And that obviously is extremely comforting to the board of the business, when if an Amazon or an IBM or whatever acknowledges the legitimacy of this solution, then that's really comforting. So I think you need to be really clear about, if you're kind of proposing this pivot, and I still feel quite a little bit uncomfortable with the P word.
Sure.
But you need to be able to articulate why this market, if this market is maybe not the best for us and this market is better, you need to be able to communicate why that is. Why is it healthier? Why is it more vibrant? Number of players, money, investment, intellectual capital, whatever. You can stand these things up. So and also being able to confidently talk about the business value of the solution, which is harder in some quantum markets, but I think for networking for computing, it's really almost kind of self-evident, and that's obviously a convincing thing.
So the crispness of the business value goes a long way in making that case convincing for the board or for the team. But you also mentioned there's nothing like market validation of your strategy through announcements, which is also good to hear. You could call this more of a course correction if you don't want to use the P word.
I'm comfy with it now, but I think for a while it kind of made me twitch. It felt like it's a startup cliche. We did this pivot, da da da, and I think that's what has happened. We did do that, and it's worked out well. It's working out well, which is great. But I have a little kind of twitch and a flick at it. But yeah, that's what it was.
It's a success story, so absolutely should celebrate that. Brilliant. I mean, and in deep tech, this can be doubly complex in any ways. So maybe you can talk us through what passed after that, in the sense of shifting gears within NuQuantum. You've decided to go from a components type business to more of a systems type business. How did you manage the transition from the old version to the new one, and any sort of technical complexities that were involved?
Yes, so I'll fuzz up some of the details a little bit,
Please,
but
please, yeah.
but the good news was that some of the original kind of technology around the components, around one of the components, proved to be, or looks to be, is really relevant in solving
Brilliant.
this new problem. So there was
Mhm.
a lot of work and development and refinement and engineering on a way of doing something, which we found happily we could kind of lift from one market and turn and kind of place it in another market. And in
Brilliant.
fact, it had more value in that new market. It proves to have more value in that new market. And then we've been able to assemble, and we've had a lot of kind of help from the UK government. We've applied for and got some really nice grants for some maturing some kind of low TRL technology that's applied. So we were able to kind of take this shifted technology as a kind of foundation, and then be able to. It was kind of fairly easy to draw out the other pieces of the stack or other kind of adjacent bits of technology that we would need, and we were able to orchestrate maturing those through grants and then later through kind of bigger procurement deals. So we've had a kind of pattern of having a roadmap and then being true to it, I think, in terms of the work that we've taken on, whether it's grants or projects or whatever, have all supported that path and have filled in the kind of gaps around this core bit of technology. So it's again, it's been a I think there's some good judgment, there's some luck, but we've now got we've got a clean roadmap, we've got a clean trajectory, and again, it helps us in the future when we think about the partnerships or the projects or the grants, whatever. We can service things in this nice path towards solving this problem.
Which you've kind of answered one of the next questions I had, which was asking if you had to change the technology fundamentals significantly, which is great to hear that you didn't have to, but build on it and build your roadmap around it. Speaking of the roadmap, how are you viewing your strategy at the moment? Is it focused on this product direction 100%, or do you have a horizon strategy to to catch any disruptive maneuvers in the market?
Another really good question. So I think this is my analogy with this is thinking about a roulette table. We're taking our stack of chips and we're putting them on, stacking up pretty heavily on some squares with confidence that solving that problem is going to give a lot of value. The good news is that solving or moving towards solving this really fascinating problem of networking for computing, in doing it, you are kind of almost automatically solving problems which exist in adjacent markets. So our number one focus, again, we're a small company, we have to be focused. I mean, being unfocused is a kind of recipe for disaster. So we have to be focused. We've got a clear focus on networking for computing, but we keep an eye on some of the really interesting adjacent markets, sensing and comms. And again, the good news is that in servicing the roadmap we have with a clear focus, if the market changes or there's some developments, we've got a kind of parallel path. We can kind of jump sideways to maybe service as well, or make good quality priority decisions. So again, it's a nice state to be in, that we're confident that the sequential hard problems are directly applicable to our kind of number one use case, but we can tilt it if we need to.
So focus on the core market execution, but keep an eye on the applicability in adjacent markets would be the message that you would give, which is absolutely sage advice. Brilliant. So moving on, looking back, what are some of the key takeaways you would offer to other deep tech product managers facing similar situations? How can they navigate this delicate balance between staying true to what they started with versus taking on customer feedback?
Okay, another great question, Ravi. So I think deep tech product management is a kind of fancy thing. It's just product management, I think, with extra spice and kind of extra risk kind of sprinkled on top for delight. And I think I was trying to think of an analogy for this, that it's if somebody challenges you to drive a car blindfold through a maze, then it's a good idea to know before they put the blindfold on how to drive a car. Having some confidence about what the control surfaces do. If I do this, it goes faster or slower. If I turn this, it goes this way. That's a really good place to start before they put the blindfold on. And that kind of tortuous analogy is that I think my experience of one, it's my experience, but it's helpful to have experience in other markets, maybe which are slightly less mysterious or slightly less spicy, so that you kind of know product management, you know what the kind of levers do on things, you know about the fundamental relationships between other entities in the business and in the wider market. And then some of those things become kind of muscle memory that you can then apply to. You can apply your brain power to decoding the extra complexity and the extra mystery and the extra excitement when it's a kind of deep tech solution. So I think there's no magic in deep tech. It's ultimately you've got to go back to business benefit, business risk, sense of urgency. What's my compelling offer? These kind of things. So I think don't get hypnotized by your own technology. I think I'm certainly at risk of that at times. It is so fascinating. It is so exciting and incredible. This kind of magical stuff, entanglement. It's incredible. But you need to kind of stay sober, and it's fascinating and it's magical. But just because that's the case, it does not automatically translate to a solution that somebody's going to ultimately want to pay money for. So I think the same is true of quantum. It's true of AI, a whole bunch of other things. Be excited, but don't be hypnotized, and go back to business basics. What who actually cares about the problem that this thing solves?
That's brilliant. Yeah, no, I would say experience of two. I agree with you. I think the business forces don't change, whether it's any sort of tech, and if you're making products out of deep tech, the business forces still remain the same, and you have to navigate. You're right. The extra spice comes from the challenge of the technology, but the business forces remain the same. Thank you for that advice. So before we wrap up, I tend to ask our guests some lighter questions to finish up. So the first one would be any essential reads or any books that you would recommend for product managers, maybe for deep tech, but maybe just general product management coming into the space. Anything that inspired you? Anything that
Very good. So there's a it's not a book, it's a guy. There's a guy called Shreyas Doshi, and maybe I don't know if we have the option, we can put a link to him. So he's on Twitter, he's on YouTube. He's had a really interesting career, across all the kind of big California, the big companies. Sure. But this guy, just everything that he writes, I could nod and go, either, yeah, I know that I share that experience, or that is an insightful thing. So in terms of high-tech product management, I think this guy's a bloody genius, and it's free. You can scroll back and read all his tweets. You can look at his YouTube videos. I think he's absolutely brilliant.
I completely agree. Been a fan of Shreyas's work for many years now. He puts out some really good content. So absolutely, we'll link to his channel in the show notes. The second question is a deep tech area that you're excited about. Cannot be quantum, but that you're looking forward to, really excited about.
Okay, so I'm going to slightly swerve the question. Or maybe answer it. I don't know if it's helpful or not. I'm not going to talk about deep tech. I think in terms of the thing that is interesting to me, that is helpful from a business perspective, I think it's kind of psychology and it's company culture. So I think I am fascinated about the impact that personnel, that founders or kind of senior members of business have on a business, and how that motivates people or demotivates people. So I think my underrated trend is psychology, and understanding the psychology of your relationship with customers, with market, your relationship with your colleagues inside a business, your relationship with suppliers. I think it's a really profound thing that makes a big difference to your kind of experience of work. And I think kind of understanding your own motivations, start with yourself. Why am I doing this? Why am I excited about this? Why do I want this to succeed? And your relationships, as I say, in the boardroom or whatever. I think that's my underrated trend, psychology.
And it's a good one because it's evolving in this world of information that is available at your fingertips all the time. So the psychology is evolving. I mean, speaking to probably our parents, and now things are very different. So good one. And maybe we should get you on the show again for just talking about the psychology and culture.
I'd love to. I could bore for England on the topic, but good companies,
Absolutely.
bad companies, good culture, bad culture, good projects, bad project. Ultimately, when I run through the kind of successes and failures, there's a psychological aspect to this, but completely independent of the technology, the challenge, whatever.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Ed. Where can listeners get in touch with you and learn more about NuQuantum and the great work you guys are doing?
So I think the dreaded LinkedIn is the place. So Edward NuQuantum. I think there's probably only one hit to that. I'm always happy to talk about product. If somebody's thinking about a career in product management or switching to product management, I'm always very happy to kind of help. And I think there's going to, LinkedIn has a kind of bit of a bad reputation maybe, but I have a very positive experience of it. I think in terms of contacting old colleagues, new colleagues, being asked things or asking things, I think there's a kind of karma. So I'm always happy to try and help. If somebody's got a question, I'll try and help them.
Brilliant. Ed, thank you very much for your time. This has been absolutely insightful. A lot of learnings for product managers as a whole. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's been great fun.
If you like that conversation, please subscribe. You could also engage further by joining the deeptech.syndicate Substack and Slack channel via the link in the show notes. You'll be tapping into a network of the brightest minds in deep tech product.